You can give her flowers, message her every day, stay available all the time, do everything right, and still one day notice her slowly pulling away. You can swear that you love her, promise that you will change, convince yourself that you would do anything for her, yet still feel something slipping through your hands. Not because you failed, but because you misunderstood what was really happening. The truth is painful, but necessary. Most men never truly understand what a woman actually wants. Not because women are impossible to understand, not because they are irrational or overly complicated, but because female desire works through psychological laws and silent forces that no one ever teaches men to recognize. While you were trained to be nice, agreeable, and always giving, attraction was operating in silence. David Buss, an evolutionary psychologist at the University of Texas, spent more than 30 years studying human attraction and mate selection. What he discovered destroys the romantic fantasy that many men carry from their teenage years. In The Evolution of Desire, Buss explains that female preferences are not random emotional moods, and they are not just social inventions, they are survival patterns. Selection mechanisms shaped by millions of years of biology. The female brain did not evolve to respond deeply to charming words or dramatic promises. It evolved to detect signals, signals of value, signals of strength, signals of stability, signals of genetic and psychological advantage. A woman is not moved by what you say once. She responds to what you consistently transmit through your behavior, your emotional control, your presence, and your patterns over time. It is not your words, it is what you represent. Machiavelli once observed something about human nature that most men only learn after heartbreak. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand because everyone can see, but few can truly perceive. People do not respond to your intentions, they respond to how they perceive you. And perception is not ruled by logic, it is ruled by instinct, not by pretty speeches, not by empty reassurance, but by subtle indicators of power, certainty, self-respect, and inner structure. Things you communicate long before you ever speak. This is the tragedy. Most men are trained to please, to be useful, to prove their worth through effort, to show devotion through constant availability. And paradoxically, that is exactly what weakens attraction. Because while you are trying to convince her, she is evaluating you. While you are proving yourself, her instincts are deciding. Often within seconds, her subconscious mind is measuring whether she merely appreciates you or whether she feels truly drawn toward you. And that instinct does not negotiate with logic. It does not respond to desperate effort. It responds only to emotional triggers that most men spend their lives unknowingly suppressing. The instinct that determines whether you become the man she respects or only the man she feels comfortable drifting away from. In the next few minutes, you are going to understand the 3 pillars that control female satisfaction and long-term attraction. These are not personal opinions, not cultural ideas, and not motivational slogans. They are repeating patterns discovered through evolutionary psychology, behavioral science, and the neurological design of desire. 3 elements that, when missing, slowly turn relationships into quiet frustration. And when present, create a connection she cannot fully explain logically, but also cannot easily walk away from. So pay close attention. Because once you clearly see these dynamics, you will understand something most men never truly grasp. Attraction is not kindness. Attraction is not effort. Attraction is strategy. Chapter 1. Emotional safety, the hidden foundation of desire. A woman will rarely explain this directly to you, not because she is hiding something, but because the feeling itself exists below conscious awareness. Long before attraction becomes stable, long before attachment becomes emotional, long before she truly invests herself into a man, her nervous system is already asking a silent question, not about romance, not about affection, not even about compatibility, but about safety, not physical safety, psychological safety. A subtle, almost invisible feeling that in your presence she can relax instead of preparing herself. That she does not need to analyze every word you say, predict your reactions, or brace herself for sudden emotional turbulence. Because whether you understand it or not, every interaction with you creates an emotional environment, and her nervous system is constantly evaluating that environment. This is what psychology calls emotional safety, and without it, no attraction survives long-term exposure. Desire cannot live beside tension. Attraction cannot grow inside instability. The emotionally unstable man does not create desire. He creates vigilance, and vigilance is the quiet enemy of attachment. When your mood changes unpredictably, when small frustrations trigger extreme reactions, when irritation turns into emotional volatility, her brain does not interpret this as passion. It interprets it as uncertainty. And uncertainty is deeply unsettling to the female psyche. Men often try to rationalize emotional reactions. Women instinctively regulate around them. If she cannot predict your emotional patterns, she cannot relax in your presence. If she cannot relax, she cannot bond. And if she cannot bond, attraction begins its slow, silent erosion. Not through dramatic conflict, but through emotional distance, less warmth, less enthusiasm, less investment. Machiavelli once observed something about human nature that applies here with ruthless accuracy. Instability creates distrust, and distrust destroys loyalty faster than hostility ever could. Human beings do not attach to chaos, they attach to certainty. Research in relationship psychology confirms a pattern most men underestimate. Emotional predictability is one of the strongest indicators of long-term relationship satisfaction. Not money, not looks, not constant effort, but emotional stability. Intensity is not excitement. The real key is predictability. Consistency of emotional presence. This distinction is extremely important because many men misunderstand stability. They believe calmness means weakness. They assume emotional control means suppression. They think composure means lack of dominance. But nothing is further from the truth. Emotional stability is not emotional emptiness. It is emotional command. An emotionally centered man is not someone who never feels anger, jealousy, frustration, or disappointment. He feels everything, but he is not controlled by those emotions. He experiences emotion without surrendering authority to it. He observes before reacting. He processes before responding. He regulates instead of exploding. He does not react impulsively. He does not escalate reflexively. He does not allow temporary emotions to create permanent consequences. This ability communicates something deeply attractive at an instinctive level. Not kindness, not agreeability, but strength, because stability signals resilience. Predictability signals reliability. Composure under pressure signals psychological durability. To the female nervous system, this creates a powerful, unconscious conclusion. This man is not fragile. This man is not volatile. This man is emotionally stable. This man is safe to invest in. Now understand something most men overlook. Women are biologically wired to detect emotional inconsistency. You cannot fake stability. You cannot imitate emotional control while internally falling apart. Small behaviors reveal everything. Tone changes, facial tension, reaction timing, body language stiffness, subtle defensiveness. Even when she cannot logically explain what feels wrong, her nervous system already knows. Neuroscience gives even more clarity. When a woman experiences emotional security, her brain adjusts its chemistry accordingly. Oxytocin, the neurochemical linked to trust, bonding, and attachment, increases in environments that feel psychologically safe. Without that safety, attraction may appear, but it rarely becomes stable. She may enjoy your company, she may feel affection, she may feel moments of desire, but that deeper attachment, the one that turns liking into loyalty, struggles to grow because her system remains guarded, and guarded systems do not bond. Now here is one of the most misunderstood dynamics of attraction. Every woman tests emotional stability, not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. Evolutionary psychology describes this as a verification process. She introduces small friction, minor disagreements, emotionally charged moments, unexpected tension, subtle disruptions of comfort. Not to create drama, but to observe regulation, to evaluate composure, to measure whether your emotional structure remains consistent under pressure, because attraction is not built only on positive moments. It is built on behavioral consistency across emotional conditions. Anyone can appear confident when everything is pleasant. Anyone can seem composed when life is easy. But emotional safety is not truly judged in comfort. It is judged in discomfort, in conflict, in stress, in unpredictability. The man who passes these tests is not perfect. He is unwavering. He does not lose control under pressure. He does not collapse into insecurity. He does not escalate into unnecessary drama. He does not weaponize victimhood. Instead, he acknowledges. He recalibrates. He remains centered. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. True power is not dominance over others. True power is dominance over the self. Because self-command signals internal authority, and internal authority signals psychological strength. So the final question becomes brutally simple. When she is near you, what does her body feel? Relief or tension, comfort or unease? A sense of grounding, or a subtle instinct toward self-protection? Because emotional safety is never announced, it is transmitted. Through consistency, through regulation, through emotional discipline, through controlled presence, through the absence of volatility. It reveals itself in reactions, in disagreements, in silences, in the way you handle fatigue, stress, frustration, uncertainty, and discomfort. Emotional security is not built through intensity. It is built through stability, and stability is the first pillar upon which all lasting attraction is constructed. Without it, everything else becomes fragile. Chapter 2. Direction and Purpose. The magnetism of a man who knows where he's going. No woman wants to be the center of your life. This idea sounds almost offensive to men raised on romantic mythology. You were taught that love means prioritizing her above everything, making her your world, your focus, your emotional gravity. But attraction does not operate according to romantic ideals. It operates according to psychology. When you make a woman your reason for living, your primary source of meaning, your central project, something subtle begins to shift in her perception of you. Not admiration, not gratitude, but pressure. It is not coldness, it is not cruelty, it is instinct. A man without direction is a man searching for something to anchor himself to. And when that anchor becomes a woman, her nervous system detects a dangerous imbalance. Because dependency is never attractive. Dependency is weight. A man who builds his entire existence around a woman unconsciously communicates something deeply unsettling. Without you, I am incomplete. And nothing suffocates attraction faster than emotional burden. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it words. People value what appears scarce and respect what exists independent of their control. When your world shrinks around her, your perceived value shrinks with it. The most attractive men do not make a woman the center of their lives, not because they are indifferent, but because that space is already occupied by purpose, by direction, by goals that existed before her and will continue long after her presence changes. A path that does not depend on her validation to keep moving forward. This does not mean neglect. This does not mean emotional distance. It means structural independence. You are not asking her to define your life, you are inviting her into a life that already has direction. This difference seems subtle, but psychologically, it changes everything. In 1943, Abraham Maslow introduced a framework that reshaped human motivation. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs lies a principle most men overlook: self-actualization. The pursuit of one's full potential is the highest human drive. And this drive has powerful implications for attraction. A man on a trajectory of self-development radiates something that cannot be convincingly faked. Momentum, direction, inner drive. There is a visible intensity in his presence, a silent signal that he is building something bigger than the relationship itself. And this energy is deeply magnetic to the female psyche. Not because women are obsessed with status or achievement, but because direction signals self-sufficiency. It signals psychological completeness. It signals something instinctively powerful. This man does not need me to feel whole. And paradoxically, that is exactly what makes her want to be part of his life. When you lack purpose, the dynamic flips. You cling, you overinvest, you interpret her independence as a threat. Every delayed reply becomes anxiety. Every cancelled plan becomes insecurity. Every moment without her becomes emotional instability, because beneath the surface lies an unspoken truth. Without her, you feel empty, and emptiness is perceptible. No matter how carefully you try to hide it, your behavior leaks psychological dependency, excessive texting, overanalysis, emotional overreaction, subtle desperation for reassurance. This energy is not invisible. She feels it, not intellectually, instinctively. She senses that you are trying to extract meaning from her presence, instead of sharing meaning from your own life, and attraction begins to suffocate under the pressure of expectation. Nobody wants to be someone else's entire world. Everyone wants to be chosen by someone who already has one. The opposite of dependency is direction. The ambitious man moves differently. He wakes with intention. He lives with structure. He invests in multiple dimensions of existence: career, body, mind, social network, personal growth. His life expands rather than contracts. He does not orbit the relationship. The relationship enters his orbit. This man does not seek validation to feel valuable. He already has internal value. And when he gives attention to a woman, that attention carries weight, because it is selective, because it is scarce, because it is not driven by need. Being chosen by someone who does not need to choose anyone creates a completely different psychological effect. Machiavelli understood this law of perception with brutal clarity. Power belongs to those who appear self-contained, not those who appear dependent. When your time feels unlimited, it loses value. When your attention feels guaranteed, it loses impact. When your existence seems anchored entirely to her presence, you stop feeling like a partner, you begin to start feeling like a responsibility. Ask yourself a question most men avoid. If she disappeared from your life tomorrow, what would remain? What would still move forward? What would still create momentum? What would pull you out of bed in the morning? If the answer is uncertainty, emptiness, or confusion, then you have discovered the true source of your instability. Purpose is not just attractive. Purpose is psychological gravity. It creates structure, it creates direction, it creates identity that does not depend on relationship validation. A woman does not want to become your entire life. She wants to become part of a life that already has meaning. Without direction, you become a trap. With direction, you become a destination. This is the second pillar. A woman must perceive that you are going somewhere, that your life has trajectory, that your existence does not depend entirely on her presence for meaning, because attraction thrives not in dependency, but in the presence of a man whose world is already moving forward. Chapter 3: Physical Presence and Sexual Tension. Being felt before being understood. Attraction is not born in words. It is born in sensation. Long before logic forms opinions, long before emotions are consciously labeled, long before a woman can explain why she feels drawn toward a man, her body has already responded. Desire is not a rational choice, it is a physiological reaction. A silent shift inside the nervous system, happening before conscious thought even enters the equation. Most men misunderstand this completely. They believe attraction is created through conversation, humor, compatibility, emotional bonding, or verbal charm. They assume desire is negotiated through personality, but attraction begins much earlier, at a level most men never learn to recognize. It begins the moment your presence enters her perceptual field. Before you speak, before you impress, before you attempt to prove value. Your body communicates, your posture communicates, your eye contact, your stillness, your movements, your spatial awareness. Everything transmits signals that her nervous system interprets instantly. Not intellectually, instinctively. Because human attraction is deeply rooted in non-verbal perception, this is physical presence, and without it, sexual tension never stabilizes. Because tension is not created through effort, it is created through polarity. Masculine presence is not loudness, not aggression, not exaggerated dominance, not theatrical confidence. True presence is far more subtle and far more powerful. It is grounded certainty, a calm, controlled stability in how you occupy space, regulate energy, and project awareness. The man who generates tension does not seem restless. He seems centered. He does not fidget unconsciously. He does not over-gesture nervously. He does not leak anxiety through erratic movement. He is comfortable in stillness, comfortable in silence, comfortable in his own physical existence. Because attraction is deeply tied to the perceived stability of presence. When your body language leaks uncertainty, when your movements signal nervousness, when your energy feels scattered, when you seem approval-seeking, her brain does not interpret this as simple shyness. It interprets it as low internal certainty. And low certainty weakens polarity. Sexual tension is born from contrast. The silent psychological dynamic between masculine groundedness and feminine responsiveness. It emerges when your presence feels stable, self-assured, emotionally composed. Most men unintentionally destroy this tension through behaviors that seem harmless: over-talking, over-explaining, over-expressing, filling every silence with nervous words, trying to entertain, trying to impress, trying to validate, trying to reassure. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is where tension breathes. It is where awareness intensifies, where anticipation grows, where psychological charge accumulates. The man who understands presence is comfortable with pauses. He does not rush to eliminate them, because tension requires space. Machiavelli understood this law of perception with brutal clarity. The man who rushes to fill silence reveals dependence. The man who controls silence reveals power. Sexual tension is not created by doing more. It is created by allowing more to be felt. Eye contact becomes one of the strongest amplifiers of this dynamic. Not aggressive staring, not uncomfortable fixation, but relaxed, grounded visual engagement. Most men glance nervously, look away too quickly, avoid sustained contact because of unconscious insecurity. Yet eye contact creates psychological pressure. It communicates certainty. It signals comfort with intensity. A man who holds eye contact without anxiety transmits something deeply compelling at an instinctive level. I am not intimidated by you. And tension thrives inside that energy. Physical proximity works through similar principles. Men driven by insecurity either invade space too aggressively or maintain excessive distance. Both destroy polarity. Tension lives in calibrated closeness, near enough to create awareness, far enough to preserve psychological charge. Touch follows the same rule, not forced, not hesitant, but natural, unforced physical communication, light contact during interaction, subtle, confident gestures, movements free of tension or self-consciousness, because hesitation communicates uncertainty, and uncertainty weakens masculine presence. Now understand an uncomfortable truth about desire. Attraction is strongly influenced by mystery. Predictability numbs it. Behavioral psychology repeatedly shows that uncertainty amplifies dopamine response. The brain becomes more attentive, more engaged, more emotionally invested. When outcomes feel unresolved, when everything about you becomes emotionally predictable, behaviorally obvious, psychologically transparent, her brain stops chasing, and desire requires psychological chase. Most men destroy mystery unintentionally. They reveal everything too quickly. Their interest becomes obvious. Their availability becomes guaranteed. Their emotional investment becomes transparent. Nothing remains unresolved. Nothing remains intriguing. Machiavelli recognized this dynamic centuries ago. Familiarity creates indifference more reliably than hostility. Tension requires uncertainty. Not manipulation, not artificial games, but controlled unpredictability of emotional energy. She should feel drawn to interpret you, not fully decode you. Curiosity is the engine of desire. When your presence feels completely safe but not stimulating, you become comfortable. When your presence feels stimulating but unstable, you become risky. Lasting tension lives at the intersection of safety and intrigue. This is where most men fail. They drift toward extremes, either overly agreeable, overly predictable, overly safe, or overly reactive, overly intense, overly unstable. The man who creates lasting tension maintains balance, grounded but not dull, confident but not theatrical, interested but not desperate, engaged but not dependent. He does not chase reactions. He evokes them. His presence creates emotional movement without visible effort. Because tension is not created through pursuit, it is created through perception, through how you sit, how you stand, how you move, how you regulate nervous energy, how you hold silence, how you direct attention. Sexual tension is a language spoken without words, a silent psychological current beneath interaction. When mastered, something fascinating happens. She begins to feel your presence, not just observe it. Her awareness shifts. Her attention subtly intensifies. She becomes more sensitive to your reactions, your pauses, your proximity, because tension creates psychological gravity. Now comes the final distinction. Men often try to manufacture tension through exaggerated dominance. Forced aloofness. Artificial confidence displays, but artificial tension collapses under scrutiny. Real tension comes from internal state, from genuine comfort with self, from embodied certainty, from the absence of approval-seeking energy. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. Power that must be displayed loudly is rarely real power. True presence is quiet. True tension is subtle. True attraction is felt before it is understood. And this is the third pillar. Without polarity, desire weakens. Without tension, attraction fades into familiarity. Without presence, you may be appreciated, but you will rarely be desired, because attraction is not only psychological, it is sensory, it is instinctive, it is physical. And the man who understands this does not try to convince. He allows himself to be experienced. Attraction was never the mystery, perception was. For most of your life, you were taught a comforting lie. A narrative meant to feel fair, logical, emotionally reassuring. You were told that love is earned through effort, that devotion guarantees desire, that kindness secures attachment. But human psychology does not follow moral ideals. It follows instinct. A woman does not experience you as your intentions. She experiences you as your presence. Not what you promise, not what you feel, not what you think you deserve, but what your behavior, your emotional structure, and your energy consistently communicate. The three pillars you have just understood: emotional safety, direction, and purpose, physical presence and tension, are not techniques, they are signals. Signals that shape perception, signals that shape desire, signals that determine whether attraction stabilizes or slowly erodes. Most men spend years solving the wrong problem. They chase validation, rehearse conversations, analyze messages, blame circumstances, blame women, blame luck. Rarely do they face the uncomfortable truth. Attraction is not negotiated. It is triggered, and triggers are controlled by perception, not intention. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that is still disturbingly true. Men are driven less by reality, and more by the perception of reality. In relationships, this becomes brutally clear. It is not who you believe you are, it is who you are perceived to be. You may be loyal, yet appear insecure. You may be kind, yet appear dependent. You may be loving, yet appear unstable. And perception, not intention, determines attraction. This is where most men lose without ever understanding why. They try to convince. When they should be embodying, they try to pursue. When they should be stabilizing, they try to secure. When they should be strengthening. Because attraction does not respond to effort alone. It responds to psychological impact. Now comes the distinction that defines everything. There are men a woman appreciates. There are men a woman enjoys. There are men a woman feels comfortable with. And then there are men a woman cannot forget. Men whose presence imprints itself at an instinctive level. Men who create emotional certainty. Men who radiate direction. Men who generate polarity. Men who feel internally anchored rather than externally dependent. The difference is not charm, it is structure. The difference is not personality, it is psychological stability. Because when emotional safety exists, her nervous system relaxes. When purpose exists, her perception recalibrates. When tension exists, her desire activates. Remove these elements, and attraction begins to suffocate. Silently, gradually, predictably. Most men interpret fading attraction as mystery, confusion, bad luck, changing feelings. But attraction rarely disappears randomly. It decays through patterns, patterns of instability, patterns of dependency, patterns of predictability, patterns of weakened polarity, Nothing mystical, nothing accidental, only psychology operating without your awareness. Now here lies the final and most important truth. This knowledge is not about manipulating women, it is about mastering yourself. Because the man who becomes deeply attractive is not performing strategies. He is embodying stability, embodying direction, embodying presence. True power, as Machiavelli observed, does not come from controlling others. It comes from controlling oneself, from becoming psychologically self-contained, from existing with internal gravity, not emotional hunger. When a man reaches this state, something fascinating happens. He stops chasing attraction and begins generating it. Not through effort, but through perception. Not through persuasion, but through presence. Because the most powerful shift in attraction dynamics happens the moment your value no longer feels dependent on being chosen. Paradoxically, that is when you become most desirable. Remember this, your value does not decrease when someone fails to recognize it, but attraction will always respond to what you project, not what you intend. And projection is shaped by psychology, by stability, by structure, by presence. You are never playing a game of love alone. You are participating in a system of perception. Instinct. Biological evaluation. Most men never see this. Most men never learn this. Most men repeat the same patterns for decades. Now you cannot claim ignorance. You have seen the pillars. You have seen the mechanics. You have seen the rules beneath emotion. The question is no longer whether attraction is predictable. The question is whether you are willing to become the kind of man whose presence reshapes perception itself. Because in the end, attraction is not luck. Attraction is not negotiation. Attraction is psychological inevitability for the man who understands the architecture of desire.